Ngozi's husband came back quiet today. The usually lively and animated Chidi seemed like a shadow of himself as he walked through the door. His shoulders slumped and his eyes distant. Ngozi watched him with a mix of concern and curiosity. He sat down at the dining table, staring at the plate of jollof rice she had prepared for him, but he did not touch it. "Chidi, are you okay?" Ngozi asked gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. He flinched at her, a reaction that sent a jolt of fear through her heart. "I'm fine," he muttered, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. He stood up abruptly, walking towards their bedroom. Ngozi followed, the unease growing with each step. "Chidi, talk to me. What's wrong?" she pleaded as they entered the room. He turned to face her, his eyes filled with an emotion that she could not quite place. "Ngozi," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I have something to tell you." He took a deep breath, his hands trembling. "There's a woman. She's pregnant with my child." For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Ngozi felt as if the ground had been pulled from beneath her feet. She staggered back, clutching the edge of the bed for support. The room spun around her, and her heart pounded in her chest like a drum. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "I met her a few months ago," Chidi continued, his voice cracking with emotion. "It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. But now she's pregnant, and I cannot abandon her." Ngozi's mind raced with a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak. She stared at him, searching his face for any sign of the man she loved. But all she saw was a stranger, a man who had shattered her world with just a few words. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "How could you do this to us, Chidi? How could you do this to me?" Chidi reached out to touch her, but she recoiled, her pain too raw and overwhelming. "I'm so sorry, Ngozi. I am sorry. I never wanted to hurt you," he said, his own tears now flowing freely. Ngozi turned away, unable to look at him any longer. She felt as if her world had been ripped apart. The future she had envisioned, the dreams they had shared, everything seemed to crumble before her eyes. "What happens now?" she said, her voice trembling. Chidi was silent for a long time, his eyes downcast. "I don't know," he admitted. "I really don't know." As the weight of his words hung heavily in the air, filling the room with an unbearable tension, there was a sudden loud knock on the door. Both of them turned, startled by the unexpected interruption. Ngozi wiped her eyes quickly and walked towards the door, her heart still heavy with sorrow. She opened it to find a police officer standing on the doorstep. "Good evening, ma'am," the officer said, his expression serious. "Is your husband Chidi Okeke?" Ngozi nodded, confused. "Yes, he is. What's this about?" The officer's eyes shifted to Chidi, who had come to stand behind Ngozi. "Mr. Okeke, you are under arrest for embezzlement and fraud. Please come with me." The words hung on the air like a dark cloud, adding a new layer of shock to the evening. Ngozi's mind raced, struggling to process the unfolding nightmare. Chidi, who had been silent and remorseful moments before, now looked utterly defeated. Embezzlement? Fraud? What is this all about? Ngozi demanded, her voice rising with panic. Chidi lowered his head, unable to meet her eyes. "It's true, Ngozi. I've been involved in some illegal activities at work. I never wanted you to find out like this. I'm really sorry." The officer stepped forward, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "Mr. Okeke, you have the right to be silent." He read out the rules. Ngozi's world continued to collapse around her. She watched in stunned silence as her husband was handcuffed and led out of their home. The neighbors had started to gather, whispering and pointing, their curious eyes piercing through Ngozi's face. In the midst of the chaos, a small voice broke through. "Mommy." It was their daughter Amara, standing by the kitchen door, her eyes widened with fear and confusion. Ngozi turned to her, feeling a surge of maternal instinct push through her own despair. "It's okay, Amara, everything will be fine," she lied, trying to keep her voice steady. She quickly walked over and carried Amara, holding her tightly. Ngozi struggled with words. "Daddy made some mistakes, sweetheart, but we are going to be okay, I promise." As the police car drove away with Chidi, Ngozi stood in the doorway, holding Amara, trying to summon the strength she would need to face the uncertain future. She had always believed in the power of love and family, but tonight, those beliefs were tested in ways she had never imagined. With her heart racing and her mind swirling with questions, Ngozi knew that she had to be very strong for her daughter. She had to find a way to rebuild their lives from the fragments left behind by Chidi's actions. As she closed the door behind her, she made a silent vow to herself. No matter what, challenges lay ahead and she was ready to face them. She would protect her family and find a way to heal from this devastating betrayal. Chidi's betrayal and arrest had left a gaping hole in their lives. The financial strain quickly became apparent, and Ngozi found herself juggling multiple jobs just to make ends meet. She worked tirelessly, taking on shifts at a local restaurant and small market stall, all while trying to maintain a sense of normalcy for Amara. Despite her best efforts, the weight of the situation often became too much to bear. There were nights when Ngozi would sit alone in the dark, crying. She wondered how they had ever gotten to this position. One evening, as Ngozi sat on the edge of the bed, she heard a soft knock on the door, and she opened it to see her best friend, Ifeoma, standing there with a look of concern on her face. "Ngozi, I heard what happened, and I came as soon as I could," Ifeoma said, hugging her friend. Tears welled up in Ngozi's eyes as she clung to Amara. "I don't know what to do, Ifeoma. Everything is falling apart," she cried. "We'll get through this together," Ifeoma assured her. "You're not alone." Over the next few weeks, Ifeoma became a pillar of support for Ngozi. She helped with Amara, offered a shoulder to cry on, and provided much more needed encouragement. With Ifeoma's help, Ngozi began to see a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. Meanwhile, Chidi's legal troubles grew more complicated. As the details of his embezzlement and fraud case unfolded, Ngozi learned that he had been involved in a large-scale scheme to siphon funds from his company. The news spread quickly, and the scandal became the talk of the town. Despite everything, Ngozi felt a strange mixture of emotions when she saw Chidi during the court hearings. Part of her still loved him, of course, but the pain of his betrayal was too deep to ignore. One day, after a particularly exhausting shift at the market, Ngozi received an unexpected visit. A woman she didn't recognize approached her, holding a child. "Are you Ngozi?" the woman asked. "Yes, I am. How can I help you?" Ngozi replied. The woman took a deep breath. "My name is Ada. I'm the woman Chidi mentioned. This is my son, David," she said, pointing at the child. "I didn't come here to cause any trouble," Ada said quickly. I just thought you should know that Chidi was helping us financially. But with everything that has happened, I don't know what to do." Ngozi stared at Ada, trying to process the situation. The anger she had felt towards Chidi and Ada began to soften, replaced by a sense of hardship that they both shared. "I'm sorry for what you've been through," Ngozi said quietly. "This is not easy for anybody." Ada nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I didn't know what to do." In that moment, Ngozi made a decision. Despite the pain and betrayal, she couldn't let anger and resentment define their actions. She reached out and took Ada's hand. "We'll figure this out together," Ngozi said. "For the sake of our children, we have to find a way to move forward." Ngozi's financial struggles continued to mount, and she realized she needed to find a more sustainable solution. Ifeoma suggested she reach out to a local women's cooperative known for helping women in difficult situations start small businesses. With a mixture of hope and apprehension, Ngozi attended one of their meetings. The women welcomed her with open arms. They shared their own stories and hardship, offering Ngozi not just financial advice, but emotional support as well. They helped her secure a small loan to expand her market stall, turning it into a more profitable business selling homemade baked goods and products. Meanwhile, Chidi's court case reached its conclusion. He was sentenced to several years in prison, a fate that left Ngozi feeling a mixture of relief and sorrow. Despite his actions, she couldn't entirely erase the years they had shared. But she knew that moving forward, her focus had to be on rebuilding her life and providing a stable future for Amara. The weeks turned into months. Ngozi's market stall began to thrive. She poured her heart into her work, and her stall became well known. Ada and David also found a place within Ngozi's new life. The two women forged an unlikely friendship, bonded by their shared experiences and their determination to overcome the past. Ada found a new nearby clinic, and with Ngozi's help, she began to rebuild a life for herself and her son. One sunny afternoon, as Ngozi and Amara sat at their small kitchen table, baking cake, Amara looked up at her mother with a wide, innocent eyes. "Mommy, do you still love Daddy?" she asked. Ngozi paused, her hands covered in flour. She thought about Chidi, the man who had once been the center of their world. "I loved the person he was before he made those bad choices," she said gently. "But now, my love is focused on you and our future." Life continued to move forward, slowly but surely. The scars from Chidi's betrayal and what followed were still there, but they were beginning to heal. Ngozi found strength in her community, in the support of friends like Ifeoma, and the bond she shared with Ada. One evening, as Ngozi sat on a couch in their small home, watching television with Amara, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time, she felt ready to face it with hope and determination. She had discovered that even in the darkest time, there was always a way to rebuild, to find new strength, and to create a better future for oneself. As she looked at her daughter, she knew that they would face whatever came together, with love and resilience guiding their way.